Never a dull moment with our geniuses. Within the same patch before, we saw the followers of one genius attempting to turn everybody in Penacony into monkeys, while another genius manifested herself in the simulated universe and attempted to kill the creator of the simulation. And now in 2.7, we got the visual confirmation of Runmei, member number 81 of the Genius Society, rescuing and nurturing Tingyun back to life, as well as the revelation of the Herda, member number 83, who has always been hiding behind her puppets in all of her DH glory and her conversation with the Eon of Erudition, Noose. If you tell me the Genius Society is one of Hoyo's favorite factions in the game, I would believe you. And if you tell me that the Herda's revelation was too short and should have had a lengthy section by itself instead of the less than 5-minute screen time it got, I would support you. But I digress. After all, Himeko did confirm that Erudition was one of the 3 paths looming over Amphorius, so I'm sure we'll get more of Herta's lore once we get there. For now, as I always do, may I refocus your attention to the Runmei part of the 2.7 quest? I think it is absolutely delicious how Runmei has been condemned as evil by half of the fandom since her introduction to the story. Manipulative, a mad scientist, someone who would destroy the space station and bring about destruction to the universe, you name it, Runmei has been labeled as such since. Only for her to appear for the second time, having just rescued a beloved Foxian girl from the Shanzhou Luofu and saved her from dying. Then again, her first introduction was not really the first because she was in patch 1.3 during the extrapolation of the Swarm disaster, and we could see how distant and calculated she has always been. Her second appearance in 2.7 was also not the second because she appeared when Trailblazer and Herda were chased around by Polka Kakemon in 2.6. And she was there because she was worried about the two and wanted to make sure that they would make it out of the simulation alive, giving them a generous 30 Curia bundle while at it. See, evil is not quite right of an adjective to describe Runmei. She is far from it. She is also not a saint. She told Tingyun that the latter owed her nothing because saving her was merely part of a transaction. And this is where the interesting part comes in. Runmei said that a certain traveling merchant asked her to save Tingyun, and Runmei agreed to do so. She said this was her end of the deal. By rescuing Tingyun, the debt between her and that traveling merchant was now clear. Of course, I believe you guys paid attention enough to know that Runmei was referring to Locha, right? You guys did pay attention, right? This was something that I theorized way back in 2.5 and elaborated in this other video, link in the description if you're interested. And while it doesn't really matter if a theory ends up being proven right or wrong or whatever, I think it's pretty cool that I was on the right track with this whole Godslayer protocol plan. In that video, I theorized that the propagation fragments inside Locha's coffin was something that he obtained from Runmei. He got the fragments before he came to the Luofu, and around the same time, Runmei was busy emulating the Swarm disaster within the simulated universe and attempting to create a propagation emanator clone. Herda mentioned that between the 4 geniuses working on the simulated universe, herself, Screwloom, Stephen, and Runmei was in charge of cultivating the protoplasm that simulated the eons. Meaning, Runmei is in charge of fostering the growth and maintenance of the living cells that simulate the eons. Which also means she has parts or fragments of the eons that exist in the simulated universe, Tazronth included. During Crown of the Mundane and Divine Quest, we saw a record of Runmei saying that she was able to collect data on Tazronth thanks to the simulated universe. She was able to collect, replicate, nurture, and create a brand new scientific discipline out of it. And if the prerequisite quest for this particular continuous mission is anything to go by, we can assume that this quest took place before the Shanzhou Luofu quest, before the Ambrosial Arbor crisis and the whole Fantilia shenanigans, which would align the timeline with when Locha obtained the propagation fragments and when he made that deal with Runmei. All that took place before he arrived on the Luofu. Runmei asked him to deliver the coffin, and Locha agreed to do so as long as Runmei would agree to save Tingyun. So yes, I do think Runmei was the person that was quoted in Locha's character story, the person who was telling him to go to the Shanzhou with the coffin. And this revelation from Runmei also answered another question I had in a different video. What does a Genius Society member who cares about nothing but understanding the fundamentals of life have anything to do with an Amikasader from the Shanzhou Luofu? At first, I thought it might be because Runmei wanted to get her hands on some Moonrage experiment. Moonrage is known to be found in some Foxians, Tingyun is a Foxian, maybe that's all there is to it for her. With what we know now, the answer is much simpler than that. Ranmei does not care about saving the ambassador in particular. She was merely fulfilling her end of the deal with Luocha. Does this answer make Ranmei evil? Well, heartless maybe, but not evil, and surely not a danger to the fate of the entire universe, because if she is, then Polka Kakamon would have knocked on her door and ended her life faster than she could say Tazeronth. I mean, as we've learned from the Unknowable Domain quest, Polka Kakamon is basically protecting the universe from a premature finality by killing geniuses whose experiments or discoveries might cause that premature ending. The fact that Ranmei is still alive even after her infamous propagation emulator clone experiment means that that quote-unquote evil experiment would have never ended up destroying the space station, let alone the universe. So, maybe hold back from labeling these morally gray characters as good or evil, because those are too narrow of a box to put these complex characters into. And speaking of complex characters, I really should talk about Tingyun, shouldn't I? Well, here are some things that I love about the way they wrote Tingyun's story. First of all, they made a point of reiterating that the Tingyun the crew met back in 1.0 up to 1.2, the one who broke her neck and disappeared without a trace, had always been Phantilia. This 5-star version of her is not the same Tingyun whose neck got fixed, as many love to joke about. Ironically, the only funny part of that joke is the fact that the ones making it basically out themselves as dialogue skippers. Anyway, that 4-star Tingyun was Phantilia in disguise from start to finish. The real Tingyun was away from the Law Fu before the Stellaron crisis and never made it back to the Law Fu when the crisis happened. Her ship was intercepted by Phantilia, and Phantilia was the one who entered the Law Fu after mastering Tingyun's mannerism and conjuring up an illusion in the image of her. Secondly, they made Yukong to be the one who came to pick up Tingyun in Penacony, which brings a closure to Yukong's small arc in the Law Fu quest. Out of everyone in the story, she was the one who cared about Tingyun. She basically admitted to losing a child during this crisis, and she vowed to never rest until she knew what really happened to the real Tingyun. She even asked Fei Xiao, a Shenzhou Arbiter General, to follow the last known route of Tingyun's ship. And it was very heartwarming to see that when Yukong was still an ace pilot, yet to be bound to her desk as a Helmmaster, she was the one who took Tingyun to the sky for the first time. She was literally Tingyun's mother. Also, Kid Tingyun? Just how adorable she sounds. The fact that she bragged about having touched the sky as a kid and it was because of Yukong? Precious. And lastly, they actually showed us when Ranmei was nurturing Tingyun back to life. I'm surprised they actually did that, because I've seen it. I know you've seen it too, the many fan arts of Ranmei standing in front of a pot containing Tingyun's unconscious body. Hoyo was like, damn, here's an official art for you. There are two things that I find very interesting about Tingyun's rescue. One is the fact that Ranmei always gives a choice to whoever she resurrects whether they want to stay alive or not. Which explains why Lambda, member number 8 of the Genius Society, was able to just decide that she didn't want to be alive after Ranmei resurrected her. She gave that option to Tingyun, allowing her to choose death if she so desired it. And 2, Luocha was the one who wouldn't allow Tingyun to die. He made a deal with Ranmei so that this expert of life science could nurture the ambassador back to life, right? And I would go as far as theorizing that Luocha might have given some sort of first aid treatment to Tingyun when she was discovered amidst the wreckage of the Whistling Flame ship. And that was part of the reason Tingyun was able to survive Phantilia's attack. I mean, think about it. Would a Lord Ravager, an emanator of destruction, be so careless as to let her victim survive her attack? Ranmei said that if Tingyun had truly died, she would have been powerless to do anything to save her. Perhaps Luocha arrives just in time at the scene, uses his abundance blessing on Tingyun, keeping her just barely alive, in a limbo, and then ask Ranmei to do her magic to ensure that Tingyun 100% survived the attack. I think that's very plausible. What is also interesting, well, I guess make it 3 then, is the fact that Tingyun decided not to go back to the Law Fu. Instead, she asked if it's possible for her to meet with the Marshal, which is something that Luocha and Jing Liu have been trying to do since they claim to be responsible for the Stellaron crisis. See, the Stellaron led to the resurrection of a plague mark, right? A big crime that surely would attract the Marshal's attention. However, Jingyuan intercepted the plan and sent the two to face the Seer strategist General Yao Guang instead. But now Tingyun, someone that got too close to the eye of the storm, someone that Luocha would not allow to die, is also seeking an audience with the Marshal. Purely coincidental, or was Luocha actually able to predict exactly how Tingyun would react? Food for thought. This loose thread also means that we might actually get to see the Marshal the next time we get a continuation of the Shenzhou plot. Marshal Hua, that's her name. Perhaps a variant of a certain Hua from Honkai Impact? Perhaps also the reason we don't have a Hua variant in Amphorius? And speaking of Amphorius, I really should start on my analysis on that planet. I'm way behind and we're now 5 weeks away from 3.0, but there are still other topics that I want to explore. For example, you know how Danheng said Dr. Primitive was an emanator of erudition, right? Like, out of nowhere, he was confirmed to be an emanator? See, maybe it's not really out of nowhere. Maybe the fact is that all of the Genius Society members are emanators of erudition. But simply because they're so chill and rarely communicate with each other, nobody really makes a big deal out of it. That's the one thing I want to talk about next, but yeah, I'll see what I can do about Amphorius. For now, I hope you enjoyed this short video, just a quick yapping session with a sprinkle of theories here and there. The next time I see you, hopefully it will be in an Amphorius analysis video. Bye!